Hello, my name is Jared, and this is my presentation over the poet William Blake. The presentation is titled The Tiger and the Lamb. I would like to start off by giving some background information about the poet himself. He was born on November 28th, 1757, and sadly passed away August 12th, 1827. Blake's claim to fame as a poet, painter, printmaker, religious visionary, and songwriter. But like most poets and authors from this time period, his work was, for the most part, unappreciated, and his reputation never really took off. But nowadays, he's considered one of the greatest romantic poets. Some interesting facts about William Blake is that since he was a child, he had wanted to be an artist, and around the age of 10, he even quit school, and his parents enrolled him at Henry's Pears Drawing School in London. Once the teachings were over, he began an apprenticeship with the English engraver James Bassar for about 7 years. He enjoyed the work there and even began to make a living through engraving and continued to make a living with engraving for the rest of his life. Some of his most profound works as an engraver were depictions of the Book of Job from the Bible. Blake claimed to experience visions throughout his life, seeing such as God or his angels or even his brother's spirit when his brother sadly passed away. These unique experiences is what I believe made Blake's work so memorable, because Blake was able to envision his work and bring it to the canvas or the pictures or the text. He did so good at this that he even invented relief etching, which is printing pictures and text together, like he did with most of his poems. His most legendary work as an illustrator came when he was asked to illustrate Dante's Divine Comedy, but sadly he passed away in the middle of his completing his work. As I previously stated, that Blake believed that he had visions, he could see certain things. This is where he drew most of his technique and inspiration from. He derived his technique from the belief that he could interpret the Bible's Old Testament into his work, which is quite clearly seen in many of his work, if not all of them. His legendary engravings, his poems always seem to have some sort of religious and spiritual connection. Even with his criticism towards the church, he found inspiration spiritually in himself and the world around him. While he himself, William Blake, accomplished many things in his life, he seems to be mostly remembered for his poems. And here is a list of his top 5 most famous poems. At number 5, we have The Lamb. The Lamb was published in 1789 from his collection Songs of Innocence. The Lamb is a parallel of Blake's most famous work, The Tiger. It is an innocent work that merely asks the question, who made the lamb in the realm of Christianity? His fourth most famous poem, Poison Tree, was published in 1794 from his collection Songs of Experience. A poison tree speaks of the reality mankind finds itself in. A poison tree delves into the themes of revenge and anger and outcomes that result from them. This work is considered one of Blake's most critically acclaimed poems because it speaks to so many people's hearts. People can find themselves within the poem. His third most famous poem was entitled And Did Those Feed in Ancient Times. It was published in 1808 as a sort of prologue to Blake's epic poem Milton, a poem in 2 books. This poem is also known under the name of Jerusalem, which is why it has been interpreted as being a description of the second coming of Jesus Christ in England during the Industrial Revolution. It is found that London was to be a parallel towards Jesus' second coming, while the Industrial Revolution had its satanic mills as the coming of Satan. His second most famous poem in London was published in 1794 from his collection Songs of Experience. London, like Jerusalem, describes England and specifically London during the Industrial Revolution. Blake describes the city as being corrupt and straying away from its spirituality to be more materialistic. And finally, William Blake's most famous poem, The Tiger, was published in 1794, from his collection Songs of Experience. The Tiger is a poem on the question of creation, and is a counterpart to the lamb. Completely opposite from the lamb due to its more powerful and striking nature, Blake asks the question, did he who made the lamb make thee? William Blake is said to be the greatest English poet to have ever lived, and has received praise only after his death. Between the middle of the 19th century and well into the 20th century, people finally began to realize the prolific and deeply intuitive works that Blake produced. Today, Blake is regarded as one of the greatest artists and poets, not only in England but the world. His poems stand the test of time because they connect to everyone regardless of religion or race. William Blake received most of his criticism when he was still living. While today there are still some who critically judge his work, they mostly do come from when he was still alive. Instead of seeing him as an icon or someone to look up to, people believed Blake to be insane and nothing more than a graver, and whose friends and few faithful followers were also insane. At this time, he was heavily shunned and looked down upon for his views on the government involvement with sexual matters like marriage and having children. To add on to this, people always also saw him as insane because of the visions he claimed to have. Now we'll move on to William Blake's modern influence. Blake's various works of art, poems, and even songs have broken through to the modern age and influenced many people and their works. He is believed to be someone who helped open the mind to the free love movement. Many of his songs and lyrics have been adapted in modern bands such as U2 and Van Morrison in their songs. His most famous poem, The Tiger, has been an influence in many social mediums to explain the light and darkness that exist simultaneously in the world, and even was a major plot point in the modern television masterpiece, The Mentalist, as a sort of movement calling card. Blake's modern influence is parallel to none. Only few have the impact that he has had after death, and is truly astonishing. The reason why I chose William Blake as my poet to do my oral presentation on was because he is my favorite poet, besides Edgar Allan Poe, whom was unavailable. His unique style and insight about the world really captivated me. His poem, The Tiger, is the greatest poem in my opinion, and gives the reader a sense of the world and how it is not always good, but that the evils of the world is what make the light bright. As we approach the end of this presentation, I would like to have a few closing statements. William Blake was an underestimated and unappreciated man in his lifetime, but today he is one of the greats that will not be forgotten. His very works are timeless masterpieces that have touched the lives of most people in the modern age. He was a pioneer for not only literature, but for the modern understanding of how freedom of love is important. He was a great man who showed us that the lamb is only complemented by the tiger.